I call this one the prejudice that texts are unities and the value of pre-unity reading. The prejudice that assumes that texts are unities experiences limitations only after understanding how the meaning of the parts of a text do not seem to balance with the meaning of the whole. Of course, this is a horizontal limitation contingent on how familiar a reader is with the context of the author. In other words, how a reader understands the meaning of parts of a text to balance with the meaning of the whole is contingent on a reader's familiarity with the larger context the text is a part of. Thus, when a reader, assuming that texts are unities, finds that obscure part of a text that doesn't seem to be explained by other parts of a text, they have achieved a very unique level of understanding only relative to their familiarity with the larger context of the text. But the moment of achieving such a thorough understanding of a text is not likely to be achieved until many rereadings of that text have transpired. This focus divides the reading experience into two distinct parts, namely the pre-unity and the post-unity. In the pre-unity experience of reading, a reader is unfamiliar with how the text is not a unity. In the post-unity experience of reading, the reader is very familiar with how the text is not a unity and contingent on their horizon, can objectively demonstrate how the meaning of the parts of a text are not explained by the meaning of the whole. Although the question of how a text should be treated in the post-unity experience of reading is a very interesting question to find answers to, the pre-unity experience of reading seems to be one of the least valuable experiences to tradition, and thus is the focus of this writing experience. For this writing experience, I have the desire to find the point at which the meaning of the parts of the text is significantly not explained by the meaning of the whole of the text. Though horizontal, I am searching for this fault line because I believe it is the most important understanding developed prior to understanding the most productive post-unity objectivities of reading. I am choosing to have this experience with the English translations of Michel Foucault's L'Archéologie du Savoir, Archaeology of Knowledge, for reasons I am passionately familiar with, yet unfamiliar with. Familiarity. I understand that this was the first text I read when seriously trying to understand what it meant to do historical research. I understand that this text was significant in preparing me for a brief affinity to what I called post-structuralism. Moreover, I understand that my incipient understanding of this text was significant in shaking conscious, some very unconscious relationships I had with tradition. But beyond that, all I can remember is that I am reluctant to commit myself to the project of limiting my post-unity understandings of Gadamer's Truth and Method to English translations of all the text Gadamer cites in his bibliography. I understand that this reluctance is related to the experience of being graded by Mrs. Dr. Patricia Kitcher, culminating in my semester investment in her critique of pure reason class. Yet beyond these, I am very unfamiliar Yes, there seems to be something correct about valuing understandings of text that are dogmatically contingent on the prehistory of a text. But to be so dogmatic about this familiarity of this prehistory seems to only prevent one from seeing value in the presence implication in the process of understanding. No matter how one becomes familiar with the prehistory of a text, they absolutely cannot overcome or transcend the influence of the present. The history of the reader is all that one can use to understand a text, and to limit valuable understandings to only readers with familiarity with certain contexts, in my case, early modern philosophy, is to excommunicate an enormous portion of the people who should be understanding Immanuel Kant. I mean, if social change is necessary, and it is necessary for this change to occur in the safest yet most productive and effective way towards a greater capacity of morality, why would a person excommunicate the understanding of a student who seriously desired to understand the Critique of Pure Reason and seriously did his best in this class? Yes, I was not familiar with early modern in a way that would have satisfied Dr. Kitcher's hermeneutic aesthetic. But excommunication seems a little extreme. I don't know. My final essay does demonstrate a high level of understanding, but it had not reached a robust post-Unity experience, as if anyone without a in-depth understanding of the history of Kant would have that. Nevertheless, to dogmatically only limit understanding to a particular cohesion seems to break too far from the tradition of understanding that could work for any person who took tradition seriously prior to reading the Critique of Pure Reason. Thus, limiting understandings to conscious pre-Unity connection seems to be the most productive preparation to understanding a text, even if one seeks to understand the prehistory of a text. They cannot escape this imperative in high quality research. To begin with anything less would only generate a low quality understanding of a text. Thus, what this seems to inaugurate is not a style of writing that demonstrates how much one does not understand what they are writing about, but rather fewer texts being read with much more focus on the pre-Unity experience, aimed at exposing the limitations of the reading horizon. To do this successfully, one would have to read less texts, yet read those few more closely. That is exactly what I am going to do with the archaeology of knowledge, and this, more or less, is why I don't want to continue reading Gadamer's Truth and Method.